Hi, I'm Eric. This is the Longbox Review comic book podcast, and welcome to the April 2025 Reading Pile episode. This is where I briefly discuss the comic books I read during that month, which numbered 52, the magic number. Before I get into my reading pile, I wanted to let you all know that I plan to do a live Zoom chat in the near future. Check my socials on Blue Sky, Facebook, or Mastodon, or the upcoming pinned post at longboxreview.com for details and a link for you to chat with me about comics or other geeky topics. It really depends on you. Anyway, I hope to see you there. All right, let's just get right into it, as I am wont to do. Here are all the comic books, all 52, that I read in April. I started off the month by reading Duo, issues 1 through 6. I finished the first Birds of Prey arc, the new all-in version, issues 2 through 6. I read Helen of Wyndhorn, issues 1 through 6. The original graphic novel, My Time Machine, Absolute Superman 5 and 6, Blood Squad 7 Volume 1, which contained issues 1 through 4, the Comixology original series Groupies, issues 1 through 4, New Champions number 1, Sparrow number 1, Absolute Batman number 6, The Summer of Superman Special, New Gods number 4, Nice House by the Sea number 6, Batman Dark Patterns, issues 1 through 3, Absolute Wonder Woman 6, Absolute Martian Manhunter 1, Wonder Woman 19, Justice League Unlimited 5, Black Canary Best of the Best number 5, Superman number 24, The Question All Along the Watchtower number 2, JSA numbers 5 and 6, Fantastic Four number 28, Immortal X-Men issues 15 through 18, and I believe that I am now done with that series. And then finally, I ended the month by reading the new Resurrection Man, Quantum Karma, number 1. And I hope to have some more thoughts about that after I read number 2. Okay, so those are all the comic books I read. However, I'm going to focus on this episode today on Helen of Wyndhorn. I keep wanting to say Helen of Wyndhorn. I'm not sure why. Helen of Wyndhorn. Wyndhorn. Yes, 1 through 6. From Dark Horse, My Time Machine from Fantagraphics, Blood Squad 7 Volume 1 from Image, Groupies, previously mentioned from Comixology Originals, Sparrow number 1 from Huset Arts, The Summer of Superman Special, because I have thoughts, Batman Dark Patterns, and Absolute Martian Manhunter number 1. So let's just jump right into Helen of Wyndhorn, by Tom King, Bilquis Evely, Matthias Lopes, and Clayton Coles. From detailed panels of the Wyndhorn estate in the 1930s, or is it 40s? I forget now. To a fantastical world, Evely and Lopes give us such a beautiful book, and Tom King has certainly elevated his game with this story about stories. This is the kind of comic book that I think could be taught in university classrooms, given that theme. Speaking of stories, what was interesting to me was that I thought the story would be told from Helen's perspective about her father and grandfather, but it's really about Helen as told by her governess, Lilith Appleton. And while Lilith intends to teach Helen the ways of being a lady of the time, she herself learns much. There's a scene near the end when Lilith, boy, I'm really tongue-tied today. When Lilith confronts Helen's grandfather, that not only demonstrates this, it also made me cheer for her. And then King and Evely take the story about two women to another level. Interspersed between the Helen stuff are various people through time who acquire the taped conversation that makes up much of the story about this book, as well as derivative works like the comic book adaptations and whatnot that they comment on, showing that while the original work and the person who made it may be forgotten, and that is explicit in the story, the story or stories about it live on. And I really liked it. And it wasn't like other comic books that are, or even like a lot of Grant Morrison's work where it's about story or it's about some sort of metafictional aspect of the tale that they're trying to tell. It was more subtle than that here in Helen of Wyndhorn. And I really liked it. And It is just a beautiful book. It is probably the most beautiful book since I read Colleen Duran's Snow Glass Apples from a few years back. This is the kind of book that I can revisit, down the road in the future and marvel at the detail and the backgrounds of the panels, and it's just a gorgeous book. You got to read this if you haven't. Another gorgeous book, but in a different way, is My Time Machine. This is by Carol Leigh. The concept of this wonderful graphic novel is that the time travel device in H.G. Wells' novella The Time Machine was real. And the 1960 film was a documentary, though they admit it was highly unreliable. The main character, who the back of the book blurb points out happens to resemble the author and shall henceforth be referred to as Carol in my notes here, acquires the original blueprints to that time machine from the time traveler's grandson's attorney during a poker game. I thought that was just cute. And then she asks her ex-husband, a Stanford physics professor, to look at them. He ends up, over some time, making a new, improved version of the time machine, and it actually works. So, that right there is just really interesting that Carol Leigh takes this idea of H.G. Wells' Time Machine and how it's depicted in that novella, and just works it into this reality as a thing that happened. So I just think that's adorable. I love that conceit. The story begins in the timeline in 2016, even though the book opens in the year, what was it? 30,000,2020. Anyway, the story actually begins in 2016, shortly after the election of 45, and Carol decides to go to the future to see how things turn out. She travels to 2035, where she discovers climate change, and that is the main reason that she wants to go. She wants to find out, do we survive this? Do we overcome this? Anyway, she finds out that the climate change has increased the temperature, and because of the melting ice caps, new viruses have been unleashed, causing everyone to wear masks to protect themselves. The state also rations water, and her ex farms grubs for food and other plants in his house, which, obviously doesn't look good. And those kinds of things that I just described that she showed in this book, those are highly likely to happen as far as the stuff that I've read, or it's a very strong possibility that things like this could happen. She then travels to the year 2045, the year 2050, and 2060, with each jump showing humanity's inability to overcome its baser nature. Distraught, she then decides to go to the same year the time traveler in the novella did, the year 802,701 AD. And this is where the time traveler in that novella encountered the Moloids, the Eloi and the Morlocks, which is where we get Morlocks from in the X-Men. Things have improved in terms of the landscape, because she shows it as lush greenery and flowers and whatnot. But she encounters her own version of the Morlocks, and I won't say anything else about that. Because of this encounter, she ends up in the year, as I said, 30 million plus, where the book started. I love time travel stories, and I like this one for a few reasons. One, it used the time machine as a jumping off point, as I said earlier. Leigh even reproduces scenes from the movie as she reminisces about it. So I thought that was cute. There is some interesting time travel theory, cause and effect, that's discussed between her and her ex, including the whole, butterfly flaps its wings, et cetera, et cetera. There's a scene where she I think she took an iPad from one point in the future and left it on her ex's desk. I think this is in the year 2045. And then when she gets back to 2016, she goes to retrieve it, but it's not there. And I think at one point she says, time travel is weird. Yeah. And then third, while Carol does entertain the notion of going back in time to kill Hitler, among other things they discuss. And in fact, one of the other things which I thought was interesting was her going back to the 2000 election and trying to warn Vice President Al Gore that he actually won and there was some shenanigans there. And but her ex kind of talks her out. I was like, well, how could you even get to him? And people are going to think you're crazy, and et cetera, et cetera. So even though she does talk about doing some of these, things that people normally talk about if they had the ability to time travel, what she really wants to know is, does humanity destroy itself or not? And it's not quite clear. I mean, we're on a very bad trajectory in the book and obviously here in reality. So, unfortunately, the utopia I wished for to see as I read this book does not present itself. Anyway, there's a lot of time that she skips and goes into the far future, and we are not there. She does not see any evidence of humanity. So, 30 million 2020, that's highly unlikely that we'll survive, even though it's nice to think that we do, escape our confines and move out into the universe. But anyway, I kind of got depressed with this. Yeah, it's fiction, but her first encounter in just 15 years in the future seems so on point, and it's very scary. Despite that, Carol returns with information from that future, which helps her and her ex start preparing for what's coming, i.e. the pandemic and other things, assuming that those things do, because as her ex noted, having that knowledge could change the future in ways that they simply don't realize. So I appreciate that. If, like me, you enjoy time travel stories, I highly recommend this graphic novel. All right, Blood Squad 7. Volume 1, it's called Perilous Relaunch, which I thought was an interesting title given some of the information that I read in Joe Casey's introduction. And so this is by Joe Casey, Paul Fry, Francesco Segala, Russ Wooten, Gloria Martinelli, and Sony Harris. So, you know how when someone is telling you a story about people you do not know, but you kind of sort of know the gist of what they're trying to tell you? That's how I felt about this comic book. I'm glad I read the aforementioned introduction by Casey because it provided a context about the series, which is Blood Squad 7 is sort of an alternate universe version of Youngblood within the Image Publishing timeline. Now, I'd never read Youngblood, but I've seen enough of the covers, enough of the 90s Image comics in the shops, and later in other comics that commented or riffed on them. See Local Man. So I feel like I know the tropes. But Blood Squad 7 is not just Youngblood Redux. It's also a sequel in that the team in this book is the next version of itself, with a former member running the new team. There's also a bit of politics, given that Blood Squad 7 works for the U.S. government. Some of the scenes play out like they're from the West Wing, which I actually like in some way. I kind of wanted more of that and less of what we got in the rest of the series. And the problem with that is that it spends too much time on the tired trope of a superhuman who's gone bad instead of the launch of the team and the other team members themselves. We get a little bit of it, especially the aforementioned former member who's running the team. Her daughter takes over her role on the team. So there's that generational aspect of the book that I like. In Casey's intro, he declares, quote, "Let's have some mother effing fun." Maybe Casey and company are having fun, but I'm not sure I am with this book. I did enjoy the art, even though it reminded me a bit of Adam Hughes with the thick outline inks. Normally, a Joe Casey comic book works for me, and which is why I even bought it. I saw that he was writing this. I'm like, okay, I got to check this out. But, I was a little tepid towards it. If you've read Youngblood, I'm very curious if this comic book worked for you. I would assume so, but I'd be very curious to hear what you have to say. And if you think if I had read Youngblood, would this work better for me? So let me know. Groupies is next. Like I said, issues 1 through 4 from Comixology Originals. This is by Helen Mullane, Tula Lotay, which is why I had to read it, B. Cuniff, Richard Starkings, and Tyler Smith. I love Tula Lotay's art. I'm sure I've mentioned that before. I've said it many times. I'm sure I buy some comic books just for her covers. I love what she does with color. Her work has a very ethereal quality to it. She does not, however, do a lot of interior work. So when I happened to see Groupies listed on Prime Reading, I went, how did I miss this? Because it's been out for a while. I think at least a year. But anyway, I then immediately read those first 4 issues. The premise is that 5 young women, friends, end up as groupies with the band Moonshow. One of them, Lisa Storm, becomes the lead singer's girl, and the groupies end up going on tour with the band. But before that, one of the friends, Amina, gives everything to rock and roll, and I'm paraphrasing a line from the comic book there, and is not seen again. The issue ends with Lisa's voiceover as she talks about Cy, the lead singer. Quote, "He's like something out of a fairy tale. We can all feel the energy. It is magic. As he plays, my whole body trembles under its power." And that last page shows Cy playing, and hovering around him is this, I'll just call it an apparition. And it doesn't look friendly. Issues 2 through 4 continue the spotlighting of one of the other girls. The second issue is from Vera's point of view. Near the end of the issue, Vera sees a newspaper headline about an unidentified girl whose face was burned off and her hands and feet cut off. Vera knows and declares it to everyone that she knows it was Amina. Issue 3 is told from Gaia's viewpoint, where she gets high a few times, once towards the beginning and once at the end, and has dark visions, including one about the murder of another of the new groupies that joins them. And then finally, Morgan narrates issue 4, and we find out that she senses something is off with the band as well. Eventually, we see Lisa being murdered as Morgan is entranced by the band's performance. So hopefully that was not too spoilery. There are some very specific things that I left out, or details I left out. But what I really like about this, I love about this, is the tone set by Lotay's moody and disturbing visuals. And the narration by Mullane really makes you care about each one of these girls, even though, Vera's kind of she's not very nice to Lisa. But you feel for her, especially when she realizes, or thinks she knows that the girl that she reads about in the paper is her friend Amina. Anyway, issue 5 comes out while, as I'm recording this, on holiday, but as soon as I get back, I'll be reading it. And I'm not sure if this is a 5 or 6 issue thing, so I'm curious, which person that we're going to get issue 5's perspective from. And if this is the ending, how does that all tie in? And what is this apparition, or what's the apparition's goal other than explicitly stated in the book? It needs to feed. It's feeding on some sort of energy here, or life force, or something like that. All right, moving on to Sparrow issue 1. This is by Kara Hussett and Tobin, Rakicot or Rassicot. I'm not sure. So apologies. I follow Ms. Hussett on Blue Sky and saw some of her art promoting her superhero character, Sparrow, also known as Elena in the story. I like the design of Sparrow and generally what I saw of Ms. Hussett's art. So I eventually bought the first issue. Note, it's only available currently as a PDF. It's a daughter of a superhero couple who gains powers and decides she's going to follow in her mother's footsteps, but dad isn't happy about it story. That's pretty much what this is about. There's a whole lot more going on here, though. The story ends with Elena donning her Sparrow uniform that her mother prepared for her before she died, which is revealed very early in the story. It's a neat black, gold, and white design with a wing-like motif on the chest symbol. and the bottom of the face mask that you normally see on ninja characters. So I thought, I don't know, just the way that construction works really well. However, while I like some aspects of the issue, and I think Huset comes up with some great costume designs, as evidence on her webpage as well, the art generally in Sparrow shows her as a developing artist. But I don't mind that. But I wanted to let you know in case you decided to go buy the issue. Regardless, it was a great setup for an ongoing series of tales of a new hero. And in fact, the ending of the issue, clearly states to be continued in Sparrow number 2, which we have not yet gotten. There was also a backup story featuring Elena's parents in action with the Night Guard team. I like what Huset has presented in the superhero world and would love to see more. Unfortunately, she seems to be having some financial difficulties as of this recording, so I doubt we'll be seeing Sparrow number 2 anytime soon. All right, the Summer of Superman special. There are many things I love about this special. One, they are bringing back Superboy into the Superman mythos more explicitly, I'll say. There has been hints or references to Superman having been Superboy or hanging out with the Legion when he was younger, that kind of thing. But this is like the Silver Age Superman. He was Superboy, had adventures, hung out with the Legion, all that stuff. So he's back. So I'm going to be reading The Adventures of Superboy in Action Comics once they get there. Number 2, Krypto. I loved seeing him help Superboy take on Validus in this story. It's just great to see Krypto and Superboy and that whole. I love when I believe. So I looked this up during Superman Day, and Superman issue 338, which is the story in which he enlarges Kandor, came out at the same time as Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes number 254, which was my first Superboy and the Legion issue. I don't know which one I read first. I think it was Superboy. And so other than the fact that I watched Superman, George Reeves play Superman on the reruns, and I saw Superman on the Super Friends cartoon, I think Superboy was my first comic book, not Superman. And so my over the years reading Superboy and Legion comics, I just love Superboy. I love the idea of Superboy. So I'm so happy that Superboy is back. And number 3, I mentioned this before, but Superboy mentions in the story his adventures with the Legion in the future. And, enough said about that. About the Legion Project, I'm sure, and my love of Legion. So love of the Legion. So there you go. Number 4, Lana Lang. So Jorge Jimenez in this issue just draws the cutest 16-year-old version. And in chapter 2, I get to see her as Superwoman again. Now, I quite enjoyed that 2016 series and have been meaning to reread it given her presence as Superwoman recently in the Superman titles. So I'm happy to see Lana Lang. Plus, she got married to Steel. So in this issue. So, Clark and Lois, they're the happy couple, Lana Lang and Steel, and I'm forgetting John Henry Irons. They're a happy couple now, and this whole Summer of Superman special just made me happy. Let's see here. So, but as far as the story, in the end, it appears that this Validus that appears throughout 3 different time periods. 3 different time periods, I think. I don't know. Anyway, it appears to me that this Validus is from Earth Omega, Darkseid's Earth. I think that's what they call it. I am trepidatious about the main DCU going up against the Omega universe so soon after its introduction, but I guess it was inevitable. What does this mean for the Legion? We have the Dark Legion. Mark Waid posted some time ago about that the Legion is coming back and that people will like it, but that's a bold statement. I guess despite my reservations, I'm still excited to see what happens because of what is in this special, and I will be reading going forward all 3 of the Superman titles, including Dan Slott's Superman Unlimited. which if I'm going to provide some constructive criticism about the Summer of Superman special, I did not, because chapter 1 is about Superboy, and that's the Action Comics title you're supposed to go read. Chapter 2 is about what's going on with Superman as the story has been progressing since All In, and you're supposed to go read the Superman title. And then chapter 3 was supposed to be showing an introduction to the Superman Unlimited, but I didn't feel like I got much of what Superman Unlimited is going to be about from that third chapter. So we'll see how that goes. Next up is Batman Dark Patterns numbers 1 through 3. Fellow podcaster Sean Ross recently recommended this series to me, as well as 1 or 2 other people on Blue Sky. And you should listen to them because this first story was a fun Batman solves a mystery tale. DC describes this limited series as, quote, "This is the Batman at his most stripped down core, a man relying on his wits, his skills, and little else as he tackles some of the most twisted mysteries Gotham City and he have ever encountered." The Hayden Sherman and Triona Farrell art is so good for this setup. It's dark and moody with a lot of shadows and great action-y panels. There's also the interesting Sherman panel designs that I was first introduced to in Absolute Wonder Woman, but this does not look like that book, demonstrating Sherman's artistic skills. The first story reminds me of the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams darker Batman revival in the 70s. That return of the Dark Knight detective. After I finished the third and concluding issue of this story, I almost jumped right into the first part of the next story because I was so excited to read it. But I decided to wait until all 3 issues of the next story are available to read. And then we have 2 more stories to look forward to. The series description mentions 4 stories, so I assume this will be a 12-issue miniseries. So if you're a Batman fan, and, who isn't, I guess, you definitely should check this out. Okay, final book of April 2025, Absolute Martian Manhunter number 1. When this title was announced, I did not care what it was about or who was involved, save that Javier Rodriguez was doing the art for it. It didn't hurt that this was about one of my favorite Justice League characters anyway, even though it's the Absolute version. But so far I've been enjoying those generally. The cover is phenomenal. You see the Martian Manhunter springing from FBI agent John Jones's head in all the Technicolor glory they can muster for a comic book cover. I love too that the Martian in the image has one eye and shoots some sort of beam from it, reminding me of the 1953 War of the Worlds movie and those Martian tanks, those spider-like tanks. That's just what I call them in the movie. Is Agent Jones a Martian but doesn't realize it for some reason? Is the Martian Manhunter contacting Jones because of the head injury he received from the explosion he was involved in? Is Jones just hallucinating? Probably not. So anyway, just those are the questions that sprung to mind as I was reading this first issue. Other cool moments in this. Number 1, the smoke Jones keeps seeing. All those colors, the shifting patterns evoking the shapeshifter we know and love. Number 2, Jones's son making a Martian clay figure that resembles the one on the cover. That represents Dad to him. So he made one of him and one of his mom, but Jones is this alien. Is this whole human life an illusion, and this is a moment of clarity for the alien? Number 3, Jones's caring wife is shown in bed after he gets up to go smoke, but she's all wide-eyed and scared. So she must sense something too. What's going on here? Number 4, the motif of smoke and fire, evoking the Martian Manhunter's Silver Age weakness to flames, perhaps. There is a mention of fire, flames at the end of it as what I assume is the Martian talking to Jones. And so that was interesting too. And then number 5, the cacophony of colors in the back half of the book and the cute trick of holding up the final 2 pages up to a light to see the 2 overlapping images. Now, while I had to imagine this effect because I read the digital version of the comic book, I really hope they keep this intact for the trade that I am going to buy. I'm going to continue to read this on the app because it's just so beautiful. Like I said, Martian Manhunter has long been one of my favorite DC characters. I am curious, however, how this will fit in with the world we've seen so far in the other Absolute books. But I'm sure you could guess, I highly recommend you go read Absolute Martian Manhunter. It was such a joy. I won't say surprise, because I knew Javier Rodriguez was just going to draw the hell out of it. And now, he's one of those artists that I now will follow to whatever he's doing and read it because he's such a talent. Love his work. Okay, that is all I have for April 2025 for the reading pile. If you were curious about my thoughts on any of the issues I did not talk about, or if you have comments about what I did say on any of those comic books that I did, please send feedback or questions to longboxreview@gmail.com. Leave voicemail or text me at 208-953-1841, or contact me via social media at longboxreview, all one word. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.